First, there was the Field75 HE, and then the Air60 HE, and now we have the NuPhy Halo65 HE, the third entry in NuPhy's Hall effect lineup. Is this the best one yet? Let's take a closer look. Before we dive in, I want to mention that NuPhy sent me the Halo65 HE for the purpose of reviewing it. I was not paid to make this video, and NuPhy has no input on my review. I do have an affiliate link in the description for you if you're interested in picking up the Halo65 HE and you'd like to support this channel. If you consider the progression here of HE releases from NuPhy, you could say that the Halo65 is the most normal one yet. The Field75 HE, of course, has a unique design and extra buttons and things like that, and the Air60 HE is unique just for the fact that it's a low-profile Hall effect keyboard, which there are not many of at this point, at least not in the United States. Now, with the Halo65 HE, we have a traditional 65% layout, no knobs or extra buttons, and the same style case as the original Halo65. Let's start with a review of the Halo65's features and specs. We'll do our sound test as always, and then we'll talk about those pros and cons. The NuPhy Halo65 HE is a 65% keyboard with 67 keys and an ANSI layout. There is not currently an ISO layout available. The construction is aluminum for the top frame and ABS plastic for the case bottom, and there is currently one color option. The dimensions are 318 by 114.5 millimeters with a front height of 18.5 millimeters and a rear height of 28.3 millimeters. The weight is 788 grams or 1.73 pounds. There are fold-out feet and a total of 3 typing angles. Connectivity is USB-C wired only with a polling rate of up to 8,000 Hz or 8 kHz and a PCB scan rate of 2,500 Hz. The polling rate can be adjusted from 1,000 Hz to 8,000 Hz in the customization software. Internals include a hot swappable PCB, which of course is only compatible with Hall effect switches, a top mount, and there is no switch pad, but there is foam between the PCB and plate and silicone in the case bottom. The stabilizers are plate-mounted and pre-lubricated. Switch options include Gatoron Coral and Gatoron Jade Pro HE switches. They have different travel amounts, and the actuation and reset point of either switch can be set in the customization software. The keycaps are double-shot PBT in a cherry profile and are not shine-through. However, NuPhy does offer a set of shine-through keycaps for purchase separately. Backlighting is full south-facing RGB with 20 modes, and it can be controlled with key commands as well as the NuPhy customization software. And there's also a halo light which shines through the perimeter of the case and can be controlled separately. There are 3 customizable modes controlled with a physical switch, and by default the modes are set up for Mac, Windows, and gaming, but all 3 are fully customizable. Customization is done with NuPhy I/O, which is a web-based application that works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Customization includes remapping for all 3 modes and multiple layers, macro creation, controlling the backlighting, as well as all Hall effect features, including switch actuation and reset points, and additional functions that we'll discuss in more detail in just a moment. The Halo65 HE is available from NuPhy during the pre-order period for $89.95 with Coral switches and $99.95 with Jade Pro switches, and after the pre-order, the prices will be $99.95 and $109.95 respectively. All right, let's get into some pros and cons for the Halo65 HE. First, in the pros category, let's talk about the Hall effect or HE performance. As with the Field75 HE and Air60 HE, the Halo65 HE has impressive performance specs. You get the same 8K or 8 kHz polling rate as the other 2 models. However, the PCB scan rate is 2,500 Hz, so that combination results in a slightly different latency figure, which NuPhy states is 0.25 milliseconds, a tad higher than the stated latency of the Air60 HE, which is 0.1 milliseconds. Now, so far, the only model that has an independent test documented that I'm aware of is the Field75 HE, which was tested by ratings.com with a result of 0.8 millisecond single key latency compared to NuPhy's stated 0.5 milliseconds for that model. So basically, the third-party tested latency of the Field75 HE was slightly higher than what NuPhy stated, however, it was still extremely low. So if we get a similar difference from the stated 0.25 milliseconds here, that would still put the latency under 1 millisecond, which again would be extremely low. As I did in my reviews of those other two keyboards, here are some latency figures also tested by ratings.com, just to give you a comparison point here and see what latency figures have looked like for other gaming keyboards compared to NuPhy's HE keyboards. All right, next, let's talk about customization. There are 3 customizable profiles that you control with a physical switch. By default, they are set up as Mac, Windows, and gaming modes, but you can make them anything you want with totally different settings. Everything can be different. The profiles are saved on the keyboard, so they are retained across different devices. However you set them up, that's how they're going to be. The software for customization is NuPhy IO, which is a web-based app that you can use on Windows, Mac, and Linux. The app supports remapping, backlight control, firmware updates, and all the HE customization options. And as of late October 2024, it also now supports macro creation. There are layers within each profile as well, so you still have the flexibility to, say, put a macro in the function layer if you want to. The Hall effect customization includes adjusting the actuation point, with higher actuation points allowing you to register your key presses faster and lower actuation points requiring more force. You basically have to bottom out if you put it all the way at the bottom. Generally, I like to leave it somewhere in the middle for everyday typing because a very short or very long actuation point can lead to more typing errors, but shorter or higher up actuation points can definitely come in handy for gaming where you really want to register that key press as quickly as possible. One other thing to point out here that is built into NuPhy IO is the calibration feature. There are 2 switch options and they have different travel ranges. So NuPhy IO allows you to select which of the switch options you have installed and then run a calibration to ensure that your settings are all working properly with the selected switch. You don't need to do this right out of the box, but you should run the calibration if you swap the switches at any point, and also after you run a firmware update, which also you can do in NuPhy IO to make sure you're getting the best performance. Now, there are also several other HE features that get a little bit more complex. There is a rapid trigger setting and the ability to adjust the reset point of the switches, plus several additional features that are available when you're on the key map screen if you right-click on an individual key. The options available include dynamic keystroke, hyper tap, and SOCD, which probably all sounds like nonsense if you're not familiar with Hall effect keyboards. These are all settings that can change the way that individual keys or a set of keys behave. For example, dynamic keystroke allows you to set different inputs triggered at different actuation points or even the same actuation point in the single press of a key. Hypertap allows you to trigger a different input when a key reaches the reset point. So basically you have an input at the actuation point and then another input at the reset point. All of these options have gaming implications, but some can also be a way to get more efficient entering a string of inputs for productivity work. All right, moving on from the customization, another pro here is the quality of the switches, at least the Jade Pro switches. Now, I've had 2 sets of Jade Pro switches now between the keyboards that I've tested. I don't, however, have a set of the Coral switches to test. But in my opinion, the Jade Pros are one of the nicest HE switches I've used at this point. They have a nice sound profile and a snappy but a not fatiguing feel. The keycaps are also a pro here in my opinion. They are cherry profile. They're nice quality. The double shot is a full layer, so they're nice and thick. They don't feel light or cheap, and the legends are crisp and consistent. Now, overall build quality is also a pro here, just as with the original Halo65. We have an aluminum top frame and a plastic bottom. It does have a premium feel and look. We have to keep the price point in consideration here, which we will talk about the price in just a second. Overall, though, I have no complaints about the build quality for this price. Now, I can also say that, in my opinion, the price is a pro. The Halo65 HE is launching with a price of $99 with the Jade Pro switches or $89 with the Coral switches during the pre-order period. And the regular price is only slightly higher than that after the pre-order period is over, and so the price for the level of gaming performance that you're getting here is very good. The Field75 HE, for example, which does have some more buttons and a knob, that goes for $175 with the same Jade Pro switches. So we're talking a pretty considerable difference here. If you don't need the extra buttons and the knob and stuff like that, you really just want the gaming performance in a more compact layout, this is a great value. The last thing I'll say in the pros is about the sound and feel, and we'll let this one kind of move us into the neutral category as well. But first, the pros to talk about here are that the feel of the Halo65 HE is the most friendly to daily use that I've experienced so far in NuPhy's HE line, and the sound out of the box has no negative sounds or anything that is really objectionable. Now, the Field75 HE has a very firm feel, and to me, something about the overall feel of it just kind of was tiresome using it every day. Now the Halo65 HE, even though it still has an aluminum plate and a top mount, somehow feels slightly more cushioned to me. Don't get me wrong, it's still firmer than keyboards like the Halo75 V2, which has a softer plate and a gasket mount. But for some reason, I'm not finding it quite as tiring after long periods of typing than I did with the Field75 HE. I can't really explain that because in theory, with a top mount and aluminum plate, it shouldn't feel softer, and yet here we are. As for the sound, really no rattle coming from the stabilizers here. You know, the spacebar has a little bit of a hollow plastic sound, but the Air 60 HE did suffer a little bit on the spacebar. The Halo65 HE overall, the sound, really there's very little to complain about here. Now, whether you like the sound and the feel is very subjective, and that's why I usually talk about them in the neutral category, which we are moving into now. So here we talk about the stuff that is just good to know, but some people might think it's a pro, some people might think it's a con. Just to round out that discussion about the typing feel, a soft feel is not going to be a top priority here for a gaming keyboard. In order to accurately measure switch actuation down to, you know, 1/10 of a millimeter, you need the switch stem to move in a linear motion without the PCB assembly absorbing any of your force. So you don't want it moving up or down or flexing. So ultimately, whether you enjoy the sound and feel is up to you, but there's a reason why NuPhy opted for a stiffer plate and a firm mount in all of their HE keyboards. It's really for the performance. All right, now one thing that is pretty much always in the neutral category is the design of the keyboard. Now one thing that's a little curious here is that NuPhy used the thin strip style Halo light for the case, which is the style of light from the original Halo line of keyboards, the V1 line, rather than the fully translucent bottom case that they used on the Halo V2 series. I can't really say whether that's a pro or a con here. It's just something I find a little interesting, and some people may prefer the V2 style case or this style case, so it just has to be kind of a neutral thing depending on what your preference is. Next up, let's just talk a little bit about the 65% layout here. This is neutral because it works for some people and not for others. I personally really like the 65% layout because I don't use the function row very much, but I do use nav keys and arrow keys all the time, and this layout sort of takes up the least amount of space on my desk while giving me all the keys that I actually need. That could be totally different for you, and that's totally fine. If you definitely need the function row, then this isn't going to be a great match. Another neutral thing here is the lack of wireless. I've said this for the other two NuPhy HE keyboards so far, and it's still true here. At this point, I have yet to see any HE keyboards on the market that have wireless that are approaching the low latency levels that we're getting here over the wired connection. So for right now, I don't count it as a con that it doesn't have wireless, but if in general, in terms of shopping for a keyboard, you might count it as a con that it doesn't have wireless if that's high on your priority list. Now, one more neutral thing here, to me anyway, is the set of optional shine-through keycaps. I'm gonna talk about the lighting itself in just a moment, but specifically the keycaps which NuPhy offer separately, you do have to buy them separately, they're sort of just okay, in my opinion. They feel lighter, a little bit on the light side, thinner, you know, kind of, and just not as nice as the stock Cherry keycaps, to me anyway. The legends are also a matter of personal taste. They are positioned to take advantage of the south-facing RGB backlighting, but they're also huge. So just in general, the legends of the shine-through keycap set may not be everybody's favorite. But if you like them, then have at it. They work perfectly well with the south-facing lighting on the Halo65 HE. All right, let's get into the cons here, and let's stay with the backlighting for a second. Now, I'm not talking about the halo light around the outside, because I do think that's a nice accent light, just like the original Halo65. I'm just talking about the south-facing backlight. Again, same comment I made about the other two NuPhy HE keyboards. I still think that south-facing backlighting on a gaming-focused keyboard isn't the best. Yes, they do sell that shine-through keycap set we just talked about, but most shine-through keycaps on the market work better with north-facing backlighting because that's just the positioning of legends on traditional keycaps. So to me, it would make more sense to go with north-facing backlighting on a gaming-focused keyboard, even though that means that some switches could interfere with row 3 of cherry profile keycaps. Another small con here is there's only one color option. This is the same with the other HE keyboards from NuPhy at this point. They haven't released additional color options of any of their HE keyboards, but I do count it as a minor con that you've only got one choice here. Not that this is ugly or anything. I don't personally have a problem with the gray color theme that they went with, but the fact that you don't have options to sort of match it to your setup, that could mean some people are just not a fan of it. All right, the last con I have here is something, again, you may or may not care about, but I'm looking at this through the lens or in the context of gaming keyboards specifically. And if we look at an option like the Field75 HE, the addition of 8 additional buttons that you can assign commands and macros now, I wouldn't necessarily call it an expectation of gaming keyboards, but it is always a positive to have extra buttons on gaming keyboards so you can assign functions that do things like minimizing windows, changing volume quickly. So when you have a gaming keyboard that is just purely a traditional keyboard layout with none of those extras, then that can be a small con, and that's basically what I'm saying here. The fact that we don't have any extra functionality here with extra knobs, buttons, things like that, that's something that some gamers may be looking for, and you're not getting it with the Halo65 HE. It wouldn't be a deal breaker for me, just calling it out because I think that it's always nice to have those extra features on a gaming keyboard. So what else? Well, there's really not much else to complain about here, and even a couple of my cons there are, nitpicking and won't apply to everybody, especially for what you get for the price here. I mean, the pre-order price is $89 for the Coral switches and $99 for the Jade Pro switches, and the regular price is only $99 and $109 respectively. So even the regular price, in my opinion here, is a good value for the performance and the customization that you're getting. The only way it's not a good value is if you would prefer a softer typing feel and you really don't need this level of gaming performance, or if the 65% layout just doesn't work for you. Obviously, if it's not a good fit for you, then it's not a good value. But if it does meet your needs, then it's hard to beat this performance at this price point in the market currently. So that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you think of the Halo65 HE. Let me know if you pick one up for yourself and how you're liking it. Don't forget to subscribe to the Semi-Pro Tech+Gear channel, and while you're here, check out one of these videos. I know you'll enjoy it. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.